Dr. Sekar. I'm a professor at the University of Finley. Today I'm going to make a recording of the presentation which I made at the 79th FIP, which was recently held in Abu Dhabi from September 22 to 26. So the topic was starting in the academy, educating and training early collaborators. Most of the pharmacy training in India was based on how to make the drugs, how to market it, all various aspects of the product, the formulation. We became pretty good in that process as we are now supplying to pretty much the most of the world. In America, 50% of the drugs which are dispensed in the US pharmacies are made in India. So our pharmacy education post-independence was mainly based on how to make the drugs. It made sense because at that point India is a poor country and we don't have any drugs to sell. So we don't need any pharmacist or if we don't have any drugs to sell. So that was the starting point. But in 2008, Pharmacy Council of India established the first offering of Pharm D in India. Now the need has been established that you need patient care is much more than just dispensing the drug. So we have to train pharmacists who will be able to give the better outcome to the patient. So just give you a brief on my pharmacy journey. I graduated from Birla Institute of Technology and Science, a premier institute in India, in 1974 with a bachelor's and in 1976 with a master's. In 1977, I joined the graduate program at the University of British Columbia, Vancouver in the College of Pharmacy. I finished that in 1983 and in 84 to 87, I was a postdoctoral fellow at University of Wisconsin-Madison. Then my professional journey took me to University of Alabama at Birmingham, where I was for 10 years a research assistant professor studying the cell communication, mainly involved with inositol lipid signaling. The change in career happened following that when I already had my pharmacist license. So from a pure researcher, I became a pharmacist in the University of Cincinnati Hospital, and my final move was to the University of Finley 12 years ago as a faculty teaching pharmaceutical sciences in the University of Finley. So it was my journey as a 7 years as a pharmacist and now almost 20 years with a registered pharmacist license, which made me set out 9 years ago on a mission to contribute in whatever way possible to Pharm D education in India. The reason was I realized my own training was not as a clinical pharmacist. And I also realized that almost not a single one of my colleagues who graduated with me from BITS Pilani ever joined as a pharmacist in the classical sense used in Western scenario. So when they started a Pharm D program, so I was not sure what the Pharm Ds which we are going to mint in the years to come will be doing in India. So I set out on a mission to contribute in whatever way possible to Pharm D education in India. The challenge one was finding a partner in India. I have been away from India now for almost 42 years. At that point, 32 years away from India in 2009. And so I have to find my starting point. My first partner was St. Peter's College of Pharmacy in Telangana, India. And it was simply because of my relationship to Director V.S.V.V. Rao, who was my colleague at the University of British Columbia. So he gave me an opportunity to come and make a presentation in 2012 at the St. Peter's College of Pharmacy. Since then, we have to spend 3 years just trying to do the trust building steps. So 2012, I made a 1-hour presentation. 2013, I did a 1-day workshop on diabetes management. And in 2014, I took up a hospital pharmacist from here, Dr. Scott Geyer, and we did a 3-day workshop on anticoagulation. That was, I believe, the first of its kind in India. and it was a huge success. The kit Dr. Scott Gare left with St. Peter's ended up training his student Mriganka Pal. It increased his curiosity and he was able to complete a clinical study. And we published a paper and he made a presentation in an international conference on the awareness and impact of international normalized ratio monitoring in ongoing anticoagulation therapy in cardiac patients. Again, I believe this is the first publication from India are using the point of care INR measurements technique. Since then, we have expanded our collaboration to other institutions. We have Vignan, Vishnu, and Karnataka College of Pharmacy. Currently, we have 4 of these institutions with which we have an active collaboration at this point. So, in the student exchange scoreboard so far, we have approximately taken 30 students from India who have come over 5 years from these 4 institutions. Plus, I have taken 30 students approximately from US to India. The logistical and practical challenges for establishing such a program with India and US are the following. For the US students who are traveling abroad, there is a fear of the unknown and a common belief that the world outside the US can be dangerous. I'm not sure whether this is true for all US students all across US, but especially the Midwestern students who have limited traveling opportunity, have never traveled abroad, and they are usually get their information from watching TV and other news reports. They don't know why they need to go anywhere. Then the financial constraints and keeping cost of the trip affordable. Even though US is a rich country, the students take a very heavy loan to complete their program, unlike in India where parents usually take care of their children's education. So the $4,000 which I charge for the trip is not possible for every student to pay. Then you have the travel logistics with a higher number of female to male participants coming from US to India now. And that is true. Almost everybody who comes from India are mostly female students. And I think I had only 1 or 2 male students. Similarly, almost most of the students who come accompany me on my trip are mainly female. And that leads to some logistics problem on travel arrangements and all that. And understanding the prescriptive expectations of the host country. And another requirement is that they are coming with me to India and they get credit for their advanced pharmacy rotation and that from the US. And that also requires that you have to have a registered pharmacist from US to avail of that credit. For students traveling from India, they are really not afraid of coming to US, so that's an easy. But the major challenging is getting the visa is challenging. Identifying pharmacy sites where students are permitted to shadow the health professionals is really difficult for us. I do have at this point only 1 site, and there's another one which I've used only once so far. And the major challenge is to keeping the trip cost low and arranging transportation for day-to-day activities. So these are some of the major challenges whenever you want to involve in an international collaboration, especially for students to come and shadow and experience how hands-on how the practice is taking place. So I have done my best to keeping this cost affordable. Where I charge the US students pay $4,000 per person. They pay deposit to the business office at the University of Findlay, and that includes the airfare plus boarding and lodging, meals and sightseeing for the whole complete month. And I think it's an excellent value. I tell my students that once they graduate, they cannot even get a 2 weeks off. So forget about traveling for a whole month to a remote place like India. From the Indian student, the student purchases their own ticket, which comes to about $1,000, I believe. And we offer them boarding, lodging, meals and transportation plus pharmacy shadowing experience for a whole month for about $400. So this is a real wonderful experience for the students to experience at a very, very affordable cost. The outcomes we have so far. So here is the girl whom I featured here is Veda. She came to University of Findlay in 2016 And she told me at the airport that before she came, even though she was a very smart student in the class, she had no idea what a pharmacist does for a living. So this was a great exposure to her. And when she has gone back to India, she is now working in a hospital as a physician assistant slash pharmacist. I mean, takes care of so many things which a real pharmacist in US, and actually many of my students are unable to do it because of the regulations in US. So history taking for the patients, patient counseling, insulin pen usage, diabetic, renal diet counseling, assisting physician with all the tests and vaccine education and so on and so forth. So this to me is a wonderful example of what a 1 month exposure to a good pharmacy setting can do to a student who is motivated. Here is the other student who also came from Vishnu College. This student came 1 year after Veda. He came in 2017. His name is Sai Charan Krovi. And he started a small program called Pharmacist on Wheels, where he started giving pharmaceutical care to the elderly patient in his apartment complex. He told me at that point that they had got about 16 patients who he regularly monitors twice a month, and they charge him 150 rupees per visit. Look at how useful it is. In India, we get so many drugs, doctors prescribes drugs, there is rarely any records of it. And think of how many diabetic patients may just have a fall because of having hypoglycemic effect from the drugs they are using. So this is a great value. And again, this is a good example of a pharmacist who can get motivated and deliver some excellent value to the patients in India. This study was done with collaboration with Dr. Raju Connery from BBH, and he showed me a presentation, a poster before, where he showed how many errors the pharmacist is identifying in the goes out around. So when he talked to him, whether they are any of the errors they are identifying, are they able to communicate to the doctor, or is there any changes being made to the patient treatment? And the answer was no. So we set up a study where we are going to compare the patients on whom the interventions is made, accepted, and those where it is not accepted, and just a simple straightforward, I know there can be other reasons for this, average reduction in blood pressure. So in 220 patients, we made 125 interventions, which is about 57%, and the patients where the interventions was made, there was no significant change in the systolic pressure. There was a nice statistically significant reduction in the average diastolic pressure. We just made the measurement 1 day after the change was implemented. Purely shows the usefulness of pharmacist as a member of a healthcare team. The concept is missing in India, so once we can establish it, probably many physicians will be comfortable having pharmacists on the round and accepting their recommendations and take it more seriously. Again, these are some beautiful slides of my students coming to India and experiencing culture, because many of them have absolutely zero experience of traveling abroad. And as the world is shrinking, this type of experience has a tremendous benefit for both personal and professional development. And these are some of the comments from the students who have come. Andrea says that I'm surprised and proud of how well I have been able to adapt and appreciate a culture much different from my own. First, I love Indian food. While I'm not a picky person, I haven't had much exposure to different culture foods in my lifetime. Dallas, this experience with Ayurveda and this college exceeded any previous expectations that I may have had, and have allowed me to grow in knowledge and character. Actually, Dallas has really taken his experience to a completely different level. He practiced as a Peace Corps volunteer in Cambodia for 2 years, and now he is an instructor teaching pharmacy in Malawi for 1 year before he returns to USA. And Melanie saw what I thought PNPS Ayurvedic Medical College was not just a version of traditional medicine, but a full lifestyle change. Again, think of it. Just this concept in the healthcare and in Western healthcare professional that Ayurveda is not all old medicine which is not applicable. It is applicable. Whether it is the yoga which we do, whether it is the pranayam, all of them could have a beneficial effect. Yes, there is a place for that in holistic treatment of any patient. The major challenge at this point, I believe, from the pharmacist perspective of pharmacy practice in India, is the PCA's requirement for registered pharmacists need to change. Their current regulation that D Pharm, B Pharm, and Pharm D are all registered pharmacists really makes a mockery of pharmacy practice. You cannot have 2 and 4 and 6 all being equal. So once that is changed, and I believe the efforts we are putting, and maybe others who will be putting it down the road, will be making a change in how the pharmacy is practiced in India. We will not at one time be just the people who make the best drugs, but we are also the people who use those drugs wisely. Thank you very much. Bye.